Alright, your traction motor assembly, removal of disassembly, cleaning, inspection, repair, test, assembly, installation, toolkit, SC494097 CL, each weld, magnaflex, undercutter, dial indicator, portable propane torch, induction heater, large hydraulic press, puller set, Emily Croft, dry cleaning, the grease, GAA, clear acrylic paint, red installation, varnish, gloss, enamel, electrical tape, paint, installation, lubricating oil, pigment, iron burrowing, bluing gear, lubricating oil, insulating paper, multimeter, mega ammeter, person required 3. Condition, description, truck assembly removed. Removal, warning of the traction motor under locomotive equipment that must be inspected while the engine is running. Remove the excitation main generator, set air brakes, remove the reverse to center position, remove the thermal controller to prevent accidental movement of the locomotive, possible injury to the personnel. Note if the repair traction motor is limited with the resurfacing communicator, refer to step 3-2G. If it's necessary to remove the axle bearings of the traction motor under locomotive, procedure below will be applied with the exemption. The step 5 upper back axle bearing halves can be removed with the jacking a traction motor frame just enough to relieve the weight on the bearing, revolving the bearing around the axle, slipping it off below. Remove the drain plug with the drain axle bearing only reserved. Only oil reservoirs. Remove the fill bolts 2, lock washer 3, rear upper and lower gear case 4. Note, traction motor must be blocked with the wheels up supported. Wheels must be removed with the traction motor. If the axle bearing cap 7-6 on the flat cold chisel may be used to loosen the cap, the place the chisel in the crack between the cap of the motor frame. Tap the cold chisel on one side or the other until the cap is loose. Remove the 8 bolts 5, lock washer 6, axle bearing cap 7. Remove 2 traction motor lower support axle bearing halves 8. Remove 8 bolts 9, lock washer 10, 2 covered 11 gaskets 12. Remove 4 bolts 13, lock washer 14, 2 felt wick lubricators 15. Warning components of the locomotive are heavy and awkward to handle. Use correct lifting procedures, indicating lift device assistance and other personnel to injury. Use suitable lift device. Slowly lift the traction motor 16 with the wheels and the axles 17. Move traction motor upper support air axle bearing halves. This assembly, warning, components of the traction motor are heavy and may be awkward to handle. Use the correct lifting procedure, indicating lift device assistance with the other personnel to avoid injury. Move spanner 19, locking 20. Lock ring 20. Warning. Head parts may cause injury to personnel with the hand protection is not worn. Handle, wear protective goggles and maximum protection. Cars are not remove pinion drive wedge between pinion and traction motor frame. Avoid pullows with a hammer on pinion. Pinion puller damage to bearings will result. Never apply heat to the pinion that is to the back and the surface destruction. Original heat and treatment will result if it becomes necessary to remove the pinion that it must be scrapped and very hard to pull. It may be necessary to apply heat to the pinion in a very short time. Pinion shafts and traction motors must not be heated, be damaged to the parts will result. Use a pinion puller. Remove the pinion gear if 21 is fouls. And it shows your halves. Alright, warning, dry cleaning some of the PD680 with toxic flammable protective goggles and gloves. Use only with a well-ventilated area. Avoid contact with your skin and eyes closed. Do not breathe vapor. Do not use near open flame. Excessive heat, flash point of 100 to 138 degrees Fahrenheit. If you become dizzy, get fresh air immediately. Get medical aid. Contact with the eyes may wash your eyes. Get medical aid immediately. Compressed air, use cleaning purpose to not exceed 30 psi. Do not compress air against skin. Use goggles and full face shield. Use dry cleaning soap to remove the grease or other pinion gear. Dry compressed air. Line up press 26 of the pinion gear shaft. Install pinion puller around pinion gear 21. Press 26. Alright, then it shows your disassembly. Tighten 4 bolts 23, nut 24, secure pin 22. Remove safety chain 25 with the lifting 2 eyes, bolt side with the traction motor 16 with the hydraulic press and safety loop 26. Secure. Warning, pinion gear will snap off suddenly under approximately 50 to 90 tons of pressure. Personnel must stand either side of the motor pulling the pinion gear. Area behind the press must be clear. With the injury, death can result if the safety precautions are not followed. Apply 50 to 90 tons of pressure with a hydraulic press. Remove the pinion gear 21. When the pinion gear 21 is removed, mark it in traction motor from which one it was removed. And then it shows your traction motor pulled out. Warning, procedure safety, heating of the parts of disassembly. Heated parts may cause injury to personnel with a hand protection handle with the protective gloves and maximum protection. Note some parts may be heated to release them from shrink fit. When this becomes necessary, they use a portable propane torch, a portable hydraulic puller. Puller tubes are recommended for assembly. Disassembly, remove 2 traction motor covers 27. Move 4 bolts 28, lock washers 29, inspection cover 30. Lift brushes far enough out of the brush holder to box. Prevent them slipping back again with the communicator. Take it, avoid the damage of the communicator surfaces. Protect communicator wrapping. They have the insulation paper. Remove the 8 bolts 31, lock washers 32 with the communicator end bearing cap. Warning, components of the locomotive are heavy and may be awkward to handle. Use the correct lifting procedure to indicate lifting device assistant with the other personnel to avoid injury. Install lifting eye with the end of the pinion and use suitable lifting device. Set the traction motor vertical position. Move 6 bolt wall 33, washer 34, bearing cap 35, gasket 36. Move 6 bolts 37, the lock washer 38. Leave the punch and punch mark cover 39 with the traction motor frame 37. Install 3 bolts in the jacking hole cover 39. Tighten until the cover is free. Remove the cover 39 outer brace for the bearing assembly 40. Install puller bearing housing 45. Remove oil sling 41, interface 42, inner oil rings 43, gasket 44, inner bearing housing. Alright, warning, components of the locomotive are heavy that may be awkward to handle. Use correct lifting procedure to indicate only device assistance to other personnel to avoid injury. Suitable lifting device, slowly pulley armature with the outer traction motor frame 47 the set of the armature with a horizontal position, suitable supporting device. Remove the 6 bolts, 48 lock washer 49. Remove the bearing cap 50 with the gasket 51 with the communicator and remove the 2 screws 52, retainer ring 53. Remove bearing race assembly 54, oil slinger 55, bearing housing 56. Remove the inner race 57. Remove bolt 58, lock washer 59, flat washer 60. Disconnect electrical load 61. Remove 4 bolts 62, lock washer 63. Remove 4 brush holders 64 and block 65. Loosen 8 screws 66. Remove brushes 67. Clean inspection repair. Pinion assembly by the following. Warning, dry cleaning yourself with the PD680. The toxic flammable wear protective goggles and gloves. Use only well ventilated. Avoid contact with skin, eyes, clothes that do not breathe vapor. Do not use near open flame at the depth of heat. Flash point 100 to 138 degrees Fahrenheit. If you become dizzy with the great fresh air, immediately get medical aid. If contact with the eyes, wash your eyes. Get medical aid immediately. Compress air. Use the cleaning purpose will not exceed 30 psi. Do not direct compressed air with against the skin. Use goggles, full face shield. Dry cleaning solvent with a clear pin gear. Draw the compressed air with the MagnaFlux pinion gear. Inspect for cracks. No cracks allowed. Visually inspect pinion gear with a broken chips, bald, pitted to, or maximal allowable pitting, the spallation, and 20% total working surface teeth. Inside the bore of the pinion gear surface must be smooth with fine grade sandpaper and polish surface. The replace pinion gear damage for the beyond repair. 31. Clean, inspect, repair bearing assembly by the following. Warning, dry cleaning over the PD680, the toxic flame, wear decorative goggles, gloves, only when the well ventilated, avoid skin, eyes, and closed time, breathing vapors, do not use openly, no flame, excessive heat, flash point 100 to 138 degrees, become dizzy, get fresh air, immediately get medical aid, if contact with the eyes, wash your eyes, and get medical aid immediately, compress air, used in cleaning purposes will not exceed 30 psi direct air, do not direct air across skin, use goggles, full face shield, dry cleaning, so remove the grease on the bearings, outer bearing caps, outer bearing stops, oil slinger with the bearing cartridge, dry with compressed air, inspect for wear cracks or breaks, inspect rollers for cracks or pits, inspect parts for discolorization indicating overheat, replace for the parts that are damaged. Note, do not paint machine surfaces, paint bearing housing with a red insulation varnish. Close 138 degrees Fahrenheit. Comes in to get fresh air, immediately get a medical aid. In contact with the eyes, wash and get a medical aid immediately. Compress air for the cleaning purpose, not exceed 30 psi. Do not compress air against skin. Use goggles, full face shield, caution. Check with the dry cleaning solvent that does not use the communicator copper parts, coil wires damage for these equipment will result in low carbon armature assembly with the compressor air. Direct air pockets through the opening with the armature. Remove the internal accumulation of dirt with the dry the clothes. Damp the dry cleaning solvent. Wipe the armature surface. Remove the external grease and dirt. Dry with compressed air. Inspect the shaft. Damage in shaft. Shows the sign of the bearing slippage. Replace the armature. Inspect the pinion end of the shaft. Check for the threads if it's not damaged. Check for the surface where the pinion gear mates is in smooth, fine grade sandpaper polish support. No checking the insulation bands of the blister crack on the brakes. Armature must be repaired with a depot level of the maintenance facility. Inspect varnish surface with the coil insulation of the bands or tighten screw and soldering is intact. Use dial indicator, check communicator roundness, outer roundness, communicator outer roundness over there is 2,000 inch variance for the 6-bar span. Inspect surface with wear, burns, and pits. If these conditions exist, use fine grades, grindstone, and resurface the communicator. Warning, traction motor under locomotive equipment must be inspected with the engine running. Remove the excitation for the main generator. Set air brakes. Remove the reverser to the center position. Remove the from controller. This will prevent accidental movement of the locomotive, possibly injury to the personnel. Check mica undercut depth of 1/16, 3/32 inch. Mica depth is not within these limits. Undercut and regroove mica. Clean slots with between the copper bars. Remove burrs. Warning. Compressed air gas, clean compressive for the not exceed 30 psi. Do not direct compressed air against skin. Use the full face shield, prevent injury. Use dry compressed air to remove the loose mica copper from the commuter. Commutator, paint surface with coil insulation, enamel the insulation varnish, 33 clean inspection, repair, stator frame, and some of the following. Warning, dry cleaning some of the BD6A attacks flammable, wear protective goggles and gloves, use only well ventilated, avoid contact with skin, eyes, and clothes, do not breathe vapor, do not use the near, open, and accept the heat. A flash point 100 to 138 degrees, become dizzy, get fresh air, immediately get a medical aid in the eyes. When wash your eyes, get medical aid immediately. Use cloth, damp with the dry cleaning solvent to remove the dirt and foreign material for the traction motor frame and field assembly. Dry with compressed air, check with the field cold leads and cable commutator are secure. Check shunt interpole fields are tight and paint installations with the repair red insulation varnish. Clean inspect repair brush holder assembly by the following. Warning, dry cleaning the solvent of the PD680 is toxic, flammable, wear protective goggles and gloves. Use only well ventilated air. Skin tight, eyes and clothes, do not breathe vapors, do not near open flame, excessive heat, flash point 100 138 degrees Fahrenheit, become dizzy, get fresh air immediately, get medical aid. Contact with the eyes of the washer air, get medical aid immediately. Compressed air for the cleaning purpose does not exceed 30 psi. Did not use compressed air against skin. Use goggles, full face shield, dry cleaning, solve with the cleaning brush. Hold that some of the dry cleaning compressed air. Use the brush holder, wear cracks or breaks, plate, reflective, deflect brush holders, inspect insulator breaks, crack, burns, dural, surfaces to replace the defective insulator, brushing off studs and pressing on new ones. Inspect studs for the crack breaks, replace the defective studs, pressing outer brush holders, pressing in the new ones. Inspect spring rings for the tension, check for the braiding of the knot frayed, replace the defective springs assembly. Caution not spray inside of the brush holder, paint brush holders with clear acrylic paint. Inspect gear case by the following. Warning, dry clean solvent of the 680's flammable, wear protective goggles and gloves. Use only in well ventilated area. Avoid contact with the skin, eyes closed, but do not breathe vapor. Do not use near open flame. Excessive heat. Flash point of 100 to 138 degrees Fahrenheit. Become dizzy, get fresh air immediately. Get medical aid. Contact with the eyes made with wash your eyes. Get medical aid immediately. Compressed air used with a cleaning purpose does not exceed 30 psi. Do not direct compressed air against skin. Use goggle, full face shield, dry cleaning solvent, clean gear case, dry with compressed air. Check with the gears on. I have been running against the gear case. Inspect inside metal band. Metal band shall be intact, undamaged. Replace gear case if damaged. Caution, dry paint. Do not paint your machine surface. Paint out surface with a gear case. Black air drying installation. During installation, feeler gauge traction, axle, traction motor, axle bearing lateral. Maximum total lateral beat 5/16 of an inch. Using feeler gauge clearance, axle bearing clearance, radial clearance between axle and bearing is 10,000 of an inch. Check that 14,000 inch shims are placed between the axle cap and the traction motor frame. Use dry cleaning solvent, the clean felt well wick lubricators, dry with compressed air. Check if the felt wick lubricators are not glazed and charred. Place damaged felt lubricators, saturate with felt wick lubricators with oil before the installation. Check traction motor lever the chair housing tight and secure with the repair insulation cracked or brittle with the 3 layers of the friction tape with the 1/2 inch lab paint with a black air drying insulation paint. Check installations and repair remaining parts of the following. Our warning, dry cleaning is on with the BD6A with attacks flammable, wear protective goggles, gloves, use only the well ventilators, avoid contact with the skin, eye of the clothes, do not breathe vapor, do not use near open flame with the test for heat for the last point 100 138 degrees Fahrenheit. Become dizzy to get fresh air immediately, get medical aid. If contact with the eyes is made, wash your eyes, get medical aid immediately. Compress air, use the cleaning purpose does not exceed 30 psi. Do not direct compress air against skin. Use a guy with full face shield with dry cleaning solvent, the cleaning part, dry compress air. Inspect parts for crack or breaks. Replace defective. Do not paint machine surfaces. Caution. Paint outside. Do not paint machine surfaces. Paint inside surfaces with the traction motor covered with the red enamel insulation varnish. Paint outside surface of the traction motor frame with black air drying insulation paint. For the table 3.7, the traction motor data. Alright, test. Refer to the armature stator mega ohm meter testing armature test. Note, a minimum 500 volt to 1 mega ohm is required for the test. Place lead 1 on mega ohm 2 on the shaft core armature. Place lead 3 on the mega ohm meter 2 on the communicator bars. Note the reading of the mega ohm meter. Connect each successive bars around the communicator. Warning, procedures specify heating and the cooling of the parts, disassembling some of the heat of the cool parts for the injury personality and protection is not worn when handled. Wear protective gloves as maximum protection. Reading less than 3 mega ohm meters obtained back armature 4 hours, 230 degrees. Convention oven. Recheck mega ohm meter reading of the armature room temperature. If the reading is still low, replace the armature. Stator test attached lead 1 on the mega ohm meter 3 to the lead AA on the stator housing. Attach lead 2 on the mega LM leader to lead A on the stator housing, not reading a mega ohm meter. Attach lead 1 mega ohm meter 3 to the FF stator housing. Attach lead 2 to the mega ohm 3 lead F of the stator housing, not reading mega ohm meter. Or warning procedures specify the heating and the cooling of the parts. This is assembly of the heated with the cool parts and injury with the personal hand protection not worn in handling, wear protective gloves, and maximum protection. If reading less than 3 megaohms, obtain 2 sets of lead brake, stator 4 hours, 230 degrees, conventional oven. Recheck meter after cooling starting at room temperature if and the readings are still in replace stator. Perform bar-to-bar and resistance testing following place lead 1 multimeter shaft core over the armature, place lead 3 on multimeter 2, 1 move of the communicator bar, cord reading multimeter contact each with successive bar around the communicator, record each reading. If the test indicates resistant reading of 10% or more of the average recording readings of 20 or more connections to the TIG, welder, or cool leads, communicator net convention indicates the resistant readings of the half below average full scale meter deflection multimeter short coil to the armature. Warning. Procedures specify the heating and the cooling parts of the aids. The assembly heated with cool parts may cause injury to hand protection not worn handling, and wear protective goggles and maximum protection. Below average readings indicate the presence of water in the coils. Below average readings are obtained with the baking armature convention oven for 4 hours at 230 degrees. Cool at room temperature. Repeat steps B. If the readings are still low, replace armature. Assembly. Warning. Components of the traction motor are heavy that may be awkward to handle. Use correct lifting procedure. Indicate lifting device assistance with the other personnel to avoid injury. Install 4 block 65, brush holder 64, traction motor frame, screw frame 4, bolt 62, and lock washer 63. Attach brush holder electrical 61, screw 4 flat weeds, washer 60, lock washer 59, bolt 58. Warning. Heated parts may cause injury to personnel with the hand protection not worn on handling. Wear protective gloves as maximum protection. Place inner race to 57 of the induction heater. Heat parts 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Move inner race of the heater. Install the armature shaft. Hold in place until cool. Place oil slinger 55 induction heater. Heat to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Move oil slinger from the heater. Install armature shaft against the shroud or the shoulder. Hold in place until the cool. Fill cool gloves the oil slinger 55 with grease. Fill spaces between the roller bearing outer race assembly 53 4 with grease. Fill the lower half of the grease chamber with the bearing housing 56 with grease. Install bearing outer race assembly 54 with the bearing housing 56. Install assembly on the armature shafts 57. Armature shaft. The feeling gauge check internal radial clearance bearing. Pass the feeler gauge between the bearing rollers and inner race maximum clearance 10/10,000 of an inch. Alright, install retainer ring 53, secure 2 cap screws 2. Fill the lower half of the gray spot with the bearing cap 50 for the install gasket 51, bearing cap. Secure 6 lock washer 49, bolts 48. Warning, heated parts may cause injury. Personal hand protection not worn. Wear protective gloves to maximum protection. No parts may be heated. Alright, fill the lower half of the grease chamber and inner bearing housing 45 with grease. Install armature shaft. Install gasket 44. Procedure specify heating and cooling part of the disassembly. Assembly heated with the cool parts may cause injury. Personal hand protection not worn and handle. Wear protective gloves and maximum protection. Remove the inner oil slinger with the heater and install armature shaft. Hold in place until cool. Feel sealing. Groove of the grease. Remove inner racing 42 with the heater with the install armature shaft. Hold in until cooled. Move outer oil slinger from the heater. Install armature shaft. Hold in place until cool. Fill sealing grooves with grease. Fill place spaces between 40 rollers with grease. Inner oil race bearing assembly 40 and cover 39. Install cover shaft on the shaft. Check with the drain holes of the cover and inner bearing housing the line. Alright, install 2 guide bolts for the inner bearing housing 45, aid lining of the bearing housing computer and cover 4039. Feeler gauge check internal radiant clearance of the bearing pass. Feeler gauge between rollers to inner race maximum radial clearance of 3,000 of an inch. Fill the lower half of the grease chamber with the bearing cap 35 with grease. Install gasket 36 with the bearing housing cap 36. On shaft secure 6 lock washer 34 bolt 33. Install lifting on the open end of the shaft. Warning, components of the locomotive are heavy and may be awkward to handle. Use correct lifting procedure with indicating lift device assistance for the other personnel to avoid injury. Use suitable lifting device. Slowly lower the armature assembly 46 into the traction motor frame 47. Check the guide bolts and line up with the holes in the gasket communicator end cover 39. Check with the markers on the communicator end cover 39. Line up with the punch marks on the traction motor frame 47. Install 6 lock washer 38 bolts 37. Move guide bolts secure armature 46 with the traction motor frame 47. assembly 8, lock washer 32, in 4, bolts 31, armature 46 in hand, check is free. Install 2 cap screws for the 66, brush 67, refer to TM 55, 22, 10, 22, 3, 12, brush adjustment, install traction motor cover 30, lock washer 29, bolt 28, install 2 traction motor cover 27, install pinion gear 21 as follows, cover shaft to lightly coat, brush in blue, install pinion gear with the armature shaft, give it a quick push and set against the traction motor cover, lightly drive a wedge between the pinion gear and the traction motor cover, remove pinion gear. Hard assembly. Observe the contact area of the pinion gear bore. Inspect shoe blowing and cover less than 75% of the total contact surface. Fine grade sandpaper sand. Armature shaft pinion gear bore. Sets A through D. Warning: dry clean yourself with PD6A. Toxic flammable. Wear protective goggles, gloves. Use only well ventilators. Avoid skin, eyes closed. Do not breathe the vapors. Do not use near open flame. Flame excessive heat. Flash point of 100 to 138 degrees Fahrenheit. If you become dizzy, get fresh air. Immediately get a medical aid. If contact with the eyes are made, wash eyes. Get medical aid immediately. Compress air. Use the cleaning purpose to exceed 30 psi. Direct compress air against skin. Use goggle full face shield. Dry clean yourself with the removal of the blowing armature shaft pinion gear bore. Dry compressed air. Install pinion gear arm shaft. Give it a push against traction motor cover. Depth gauge. Manage your pinion gear position respecting the shaft. Record reading each chalk mark and contacts between the depth guide and pinion gear armature shaft. So the pinion gear can be remounted exactly the same position. Lightly drive the wedge of the pinion gear traction motor cover to remove the pinion gear. Set pinion gear's induction heater set to 273.2 degrees Fahrenheit above the shaft. Warning: heated parts may cause injury to personnel. Hand protection when handled. Wear protective gloves and maximum protection. Remove pinion gear heater. Install armature shaft. Line up chocks and pinion gear armature shaft. Remove pinion. Push pinion gear toward traction motor cover. Use depth gauge, check in advance, pinion gear advance of 46 to 56,000 of an inch. Greater record recording as step G above. Advance does not obtain, pinion gear must be pulled and installed. Install lock ring 20, spacer nut 19. Your insulation warning. Once the locomotive are heavy and may be awkward to handle, use correct lifting procedure indicating lift device assistance with the other personnel to avoid injury. Use suitable lifting device, traction motor, bearing, housing, face wheel assembly, axle assembly. Use the upper traction motor axle support bearing half of the traction motor frame. Apply light film of the oil to the bearing surface. Use suitable lifting device. Slowly lower the wheel and axle frame in the traction motor frame. Apply light film on the oil to the bearing surface. Install the 2 lower traction motor axle bearing halves 8. Install 2 felt wet lubricators 15 on 2 axle caps 7. The 2 axle caps 7. Screw the 8 lock washer 6. Bolt 5. Install gaskets 12. The cover 11. Screw 8 lock washers 10. Bolts 9. Install gear case 4. Screw the 5 bolts 2. Lock washer 3. Install drain plug 1. Fill axle bearing oil reserve reservoirs with lubricating oil. Fill reservoir oil depth 3/4 inch to 1/4 inch. Fill gear case to 8 pounds of crater lube grease. Hook traction motor. Leave the test stand. Test run traction motor at 15 RPMs for 2 hours before installing. And that was your traction motor assembly.